All right.
Clap your hands, everybody. Everybody just clap your hands. Clap your hands, everybody. Everybody just clap your hands. Well, I'm Curtis Blow, and I want you to know that these are the words.
I'm gonna lead with. That's what we're gonna kick this off.
Oh, that's what?
Yeah. It's recording.
What my history and experience with CCAR was really being able to establish some type of connection with the 12-step fellowship. That, you know, we understand advocacy with anonymity, but a lot of people didn't realize what that meant. And of course, people was willing to share this message of hope, but only at the level of 12-step fellowship. And early on in my recovery, you know, I questioned my sponsor about why we can't go out in the community and tell our story. He says, well, you can do it at a meeting. And it made me realize that there was a little more value in telling our story outside of the 12-step fellowship, because there was people that didn't even know 12-step fellowship existed. And so, you know, as a person in early recovery, was realizing the impact that we make in the rooms. There was a lot of souls that need to be saved outside the rooms. And actually back in 93, 94, I started going back into the prison through H&I, through a committee, and carrying the message. But when I started working in the addiction field, I was with an advocacy group called Friends of Recovery in Norwalk. And back then, back in 95, you know, we were like doing some local advocacy work, you know, having events, telling our stories, you know, being a part of celebrations in the community. And they were received with questionable thoughts, you know, and some criticism. It was stigma that was really prevalent because people would not come around our table. They, you know, very few people would come out to the events, you know, but what happened was over time, before I got to CCAR, people started recognizing that there was a recovery community and there was a community outside of the 12-step fellowship, because then people were coming that wanted to support us that were not in recovery, but they believed in the cause. Just like anybody that believes in cancer walks, or, you know, don't have to have cancer to be part of that society. So we took our show on the road, and it was a struggle to get people to recognize the value of what the recovery community presented. The fact that we were paying taxes, we were, you know, working, you know, law-abiding citizens, we were, you know, becoming, you know, business owners. We were, you know, in political positions, and people were starting to realize that there was some credibility to people in recovery, and it was not necessarily people that was part of the 12-step fellowship, but they didn't associate that with the fact that there was people that was in recovery that didn't go to 12-step fellowship. They just thought everybody that was in recovery went to a 12-step fellowship, and what that looked like was, you can't advocate outside of that fellowship, and people didn't realize that the 11th tradition stated that we could. And so what's happening is over the years, you know, we have, when I became part of CCAR volunteer back in '98. We saw the need to have public awareness of recovery in the community outside of the 12-step fellowship. We needed to see if we can organize it. Bob Savage his question was, can the recovery community be organized? What happened was the recovery community was never organized to be able to provide support outside the 12-step fellowship. But back in '98, CCAR was becoming established, and a young man, well, I can't say young man, but he is to me still a young man, Bob Savage came to one of our Friends of Recovery meetings down in Norwalk, and he shared about the bigger picture of what we can support statewide and nationally. And I became quickly fascinated that, we could put our show on the road to touch many more people. And so we were starting to do things that really set the precedence of making the recovery community visible. So those were early years that we realized that as part of advocacy, we were able to get the voice of recovery out into the community and put a face on recovery to show that recovery was possible. That it was working in the lives of millions of people. And so, we started to get some federal funding. We got some federal funding back then. And so I was hired in 2000 as one of 3 staff to develop chapters of CCAR. So it was a lot of work in the beginning with getting the 12-step fellowship to understand what advocacy was about, Thank God for the early Marty Manns and the Senator Harold Hughes of the world that recognized that, there was a need to bring recovery into some organizational structure with regards to making the community recognize recovery. Because if we allowed the 12-step fellowship, it never got done. I mean, because the anonymity clause would have been like what we were receiving was that message can't be brought out. But like someone said, you drive by a place where there's 20 people outside smoking cigarettes. What's so secret about that? So it was really a joy, but at the same time a challenge to build the recovery community through our chapter development. We started to create a need to support people in the recovery by meeting them where they're at. When they came out of those systems of treatment or prison or homelessness or wanting to get their lives back. And our second grant of funding we were awarded was in 2001. It was a 4-year grant that asked us to continue to do advocacy, because those first 3 years from 98 to 2001 was strictly advocacy. We're out there building and advocating and going to the LOB and the legislative office building and in the community holding events, speaking engagements. The federal government said, okay, great you're doing work with advocacy, we love it, but now we want to shift the paradigm. And you're talking about recovery support services these last 3-4 years. Well, we want you to start doing recovery support services. I think that's where the evolution came, where now we were going to be an RCO that provided recovery support services and resources to the recovery community and being able to help them maintain and sustain recovery. That's where the emergence of recovery community centers came in, because now we can actually do the physical work that was so desperately needed to be done. Up until the time we started to think of having recovery community centers, it was only just once a month meeting in a community on a chapter development level that people were talking about, issues and concerns and how to address them and whatnot. But now we had a physical place of our own that we can have a daily schedule of opportunity for the recovery community. We didn't know what that looked like. We just knew we had to open them doors. And so in the center, we realized that we needed to continually educate, we needed to continually advocate, and we need to continually provide recovery support services. Those 3 pieces became our mission. And up until that time, we didn't really we had a mission, but our vision was really more about helping people in understanding addiction and recovery. But we actually shifted gears and changed our mission statement and our vision statement when we began to develop the centers. When I think about, my transition out of prison into the community back when I was released, there wasn't a lot of support, recovery support. There was very, very little minimum. But there was community-based agencies that were still involved in helping people to a degree. But I think it was more focused, like you shared, on getting people employed, gainfully employed, housing to a degree, or possibly, helping them, get some clothing, identify where the food pantries were. But now, we started to realize that recovery support services takes on a whole new gamut of things across the board, from child care to transportation. We have to take a look at individuals where the health care or primary care is not being taken care of. And I think what we realized was back in the early 2000s was that to provide recovery support services, you have to meet the needs of where the person is at. Here's an example. Think about somebody that coming to you for support, but yet they have nowhere to sleep. They need dental because they're not eating properly, because they can't eat because of their dental issues. They don't have a job and are not employable and don't even fit the criteria to be on Social Security. So there's challenges already that you need to help support them to be able to obtain those things. And so how do you work with someone like that? How do you work with someone like that comes out of prison? They're released, end of sentence, kick them out. Here's your $2.80 that's on the books and your ticket. So now what you have is a system that kind of like, they kind of say, set up to fail, So basically that individual may be at the higher recidivism rate to go back. And so you think about, how do we cut that recidivism rate to the point where people can obtain some of the things the basic necessities of what they need to maintain and sustain their recovery. So recovery coaching evolved around building volunteers to be coaches in our centers. And what it was really the idea that we could have coaches taking that personal experience that they had, if they had lived experience, taking that lived experience or that experience of knowing how to support one in their recovery process, and allowing them to have a peer-to-peer relationship. Because at some point, I would sometimes sit in my office all morning coaching. and my job description did not entail, 20 out of the 35 hours of recovery coaching. So we started to realize that we could use volunteers in that same place where we were being used by staff. Recovery's first. That's our foundational principle. Number one is we always put recovery first, and with the recovery coach, that's what they should do. Always put the individual's recovery first. It said, early in my recovery, at the 12-step fellowship level, I was told that if you put anything before your recovery, it's the first thing you lose. That's why I didn't go in a relationship for the first year. But more importantly, I've learned a lot through 12-step fellowship, and I know that it was important for me to learn the lessons of those that came before me, my predecessors. And I believe that with recovery coaching, that was really unique to say, I believe in helping people until they can help themselves. But if they can help themselves, I'm still going to help them because we all need help. CCAR is an organization that really has stood for the support of the recovering community and their ability to care for each other. That's one of our themes. We organize the recovering community and its ability to care. And I think the ability to care is like really making coaches realize that The individuals that we connect with are people that are willing to help, but they don't know how to help. The loving and nurturing and care that we give at CCAR that's what recovery coaching is. You know, we accept people who they are, where they are, and what they are. And despite all odds to the contrary, individuals really feel comfortable because now they don't have to like put on a facade, or they don't have to, they can like be who they are. And we accept people we accept people just like that. And I think like the connection will be more valuable when we say, you know, you're in recovery if you say you are. And what that means is whatever your recovery looks like, that's okay with us. You've been put in a position to represent the recovering community. And it's really an honor that you should behold. Because the people around you, your team, will build you up. But you have a purpose, and you should bring a passion. None like before, because now it is really essential that you understand what your role is as a CCAR staff. People are watching, people are expecting. Because you were hired, we already feel that you know what you know. But when it comes to the times when you're uncertain, or nobody's watching, you gotta put your best effort and make sure that if you need some help, ask somebody. And I think about, you know, those 20 years that I've been part of this great organization. I remember being hired and being told that they're gonna look at you like a microscope because you're in recovery and they don't believe that you should get this paid position and do what you do. You gotta prove them wrong. And every day you wake up, you keep proving them wrong until you get it right here. And that's when you know that you want to be here, not for the money, but for the passion and the purpose. Yeah. That's it. Yeah, bro. That's it.
Thank you, brother.